Hello everybody and welcome to episode 45 of Competitive Magic with the Carnies. I'm your host from Italy, Andrea Mengucci, and joining me today we have three amazing guests. The first one from Spain, we have Javier Dominguez.
Hello everyone.
And then from Australia, we got Anthony Lee.
Hola.
And finally, we have Simon Nielsen from Denmark.
Thank you guys for having me on. Oh my god. I've been such a fan for so long. Now I get to be part of this crew. You know, a temporary Connie.
Yeah. Yes. Welcome, Simon. And first thing first, let's all give a big round of applause to Javier Dominguez and Simon Nielsen, who managed to do a back-to-back Pro Tour top 8. That's insane. Clap, 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 clap.
Clap, clap, clap.
And yeah, you can see them here. You can see them here if you're watching on YouTube. This is the team picture, the top 8 picture that I personally took there in Barcelona. It was a great weekend. I was so happy to be there and watch you guys do a fantastic result. Both with Mono Green Tron. We're definitely gonna talk plenty about that. But first, guys, Simon, I'll let you start. Tell us something. What was your run? You were at some point 12-0 at a Pro Tour. That's incredible.
It's actually, yeah, like it's like still feels like completely unreal to like have that. I just like walk up to a match and I like, like sometimes I just like barely even know what I was doing with Tron because I was playing a matchup I hadn't played before. But then just like, I don't know, cast an Ulamog and they scoop and I'm like, oh, I guess I win. And at some point I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I've won 12 in a row now. This is kind of crazy. I think, I mean, for the limited portion, I'm really, like, this is the first time I've gone 6-0, so I'm really proud of that. And then, like, the modern portion just, like, yeah, was very surreal. Like, if any one of you watched my round 8 against Zach in the mirror, like, that was just such, like, a surreal game where, like, he just scoops on turn 3, like, 2 games in a row. And, like, where I feel like I'm not doing, like, not necessarily, like, where like, scary things are happening. Like, I keep a hand without Tron lands on 4 in game 1, and then I play a turn 3 card off a talisman, and he scoops. Can't the Great Creator. And then in game 2, like, he has a Stone Brain out, and just, and I'm like, oh no, like, I'm just gonna remove all my Ursus Towers. But then he reasons that it's better to not remove my Ursus Towers, and I just get to play a turn 3 card liberated. Like, it's crazy, crazy game. And I feel like that really, like, shows like how like a lot of my Tron rounds went. So it's very crazy. I think like some of the like oddest things were that like at 11-0, like after 3-0 my draft pod, obviously I'm super stoked, and I know next round is a win and in. Because like for sure I'm in with 12 wins and my breakers, like there's no, even if I lose the next 4, like I would be fine. So playing against Kai in my win and in, I'm like, oh man. And then like we're seated like not in the feature match area because they because coverage believes that like 13 wins is what you want. So like they don't really care about me reaching, like anyone reaching their 12th win. They just want to like capture their 13th win. But the 13th win doesn't really matter. So like made for some like very odd like very odd like weird celebration type things where like I beat Kai, we're like just all alone, like Javier is sitting next to me, and then like in this like a play area where everyone else like is up in the feature match, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll just walk around, but like did I really like make it? Like there's no like fanfare or everything, and then I'm just like put through feature match after feature match, being like, I mean, I guess I'm fighting for something like placement, but it's very odd like that the whole experience. I mean, obviously I'm super stoked to have it happen like that.
What about you, Javier? Any crazy story from the weekend? You also did I believe you finished first in the Swiss, so of course had a fantastic run as well. Did you also go 6-0 in draft?
No, I went 5-1. Same. I got a similar record than in Minneapolis actually, but I think so, right? I don't know. Yeah, I think 1-5-1 in Minneapolis. Yeah. Honestly, I mean, a little bit like Simon. Like I just don't know. Things were happening. Like I started to draft with not a very good deck or whatever. And then I lost the first round to Uncosato to Pivo with the Commandeer. So I was 2-2, and I was like, sure, let's hope for a fine PT or whatever. I'm 2-2, and I just kept winning rounds. I don't know. I also beat Anthony Lee from Australia. Just
Oh
saying.
yeah, that happened. That's right. That
Ooh,
was a
did
very
you?
sad pairing. I checked my phone. I'm like, oh really? What? God damn it! You know.
Yeah, on the 3-2 bracket or 2-2 bracket or something. Two. I think it was 2-2, right? 2-2 or 3-2. 3-2.
Yeah, I think it was 2-2. Yeah, it was 2-2.
I don't know, like 3-2 or 3-2 or whatever. Definitely with that, I did not expect either of one of us to top 8 the tournament. But yeah,
Not
so I
from
don't know, it
2-2.
just
Yeah.
was. Yeah, I was just playing and a little like Simon. I did not cast Ulamog many times on my tournament, but I just cast Karn Great Creator so many times. Like every
You
hand
also
had
cast
Karn
Khan
Great Creator.
Liberated a lot.
Yeah, also against you. I think I cast Calibrated more than Ulamog, probably. I just the Karns. My deck was Karn Tribal every time. Like, I just Karn. I remember, like, mulligan into 5 into, like, Tron and 2 Karns or whatever. You know, like, Karn was all around, like, all over the place. And, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Karn constructed. Yeah, so, I mean, it was
Constructed.
obviously, like, a great reading for me. Yeah. The drops went well. This limited format, I was a little bit skeptical, but it went well again, so I'm gonna try it. I'm keeping it this way as long as it works. But yeah, I think obviously like whenever you top in a tournament, you got very lucky. My impression is that I got like similar lucky, of course, again. But at this point, I'm willing to try as much as we can for next time. And we made it 2, right, Simon? It could be 3 in a row next time. Who knows? And I'm also ready to go 0-5 next tournament. Like if I go top 8 0-5, it's like fair enough.
Yeah,
Like
that's
sometimes.
that's kind of like the way you want it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm saying like, like if we go 0-5 next tournament, obviously it's gonna suck or whatever. But like it's fun. Like the luck required to go to 2 points in a row is actually bigger than the luck you require to go like 1-4 or 2-5 or whatever. So at this point, I'm optimistic with the future. I'm very happy. Like I'm very happy. Like these top finishes are definitely very good, and I mean. Making top 8 in a PT never gets old. Like they're all like, you're there and it's
Definitely, yeah. Like once the whole. Actually, it was also funny during the like top 8 announcement, where again like things felt a little bit surreal because like I know from last one that at first they do like a practice one, and they said they were gonna do a practice one. So I'm like, yeah, okay, I know. Like we just get called out, and then like we get put back, and then we can actually do the real show. And so I was like called out like Simon Nielsen. I was like pretending like, yeah, I'm happy, but yeah, like and I'm gonna put like the real, and then like I run on stage and I'm like running in the wrong place and I'm like, oh, that's fine, like this is just a practice run, and and then like once they're done, they're like like Cedric's like, see you tomorrow, and the lights went down, and it's like, wait, was that actually it? Was that live?
Yeah. You guys did the practice run in Minneapolis actually, so that's
Yes.
what they meant, obviously. So
Oh, Minneapolis was our practice run. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
All right, yeah, amazing stories, great job. And also, we have to mention that Anthony also achieved something important at the PT.
yes.
You got
What?
enough wins to qualify to a bunch of Pro Tours in a row. How does that work, Anthony?
No one really knows. It's all a mystery. So
Come
I think
on.
it's basically the same because Javier made top 8 and Simon made top 8 and I went 8-8, which is basically the same thing. There's a lot of 8s there, right? So, yeah, that was okay, I guess. Yeah, so I qualified for at least the next PT, and I guess if I day 2 that one, I'll play the one after that. In a not yet announced location. So that's nice. And I would have missed Worlds by 1 win off AMP, but fortunately I'm Australian, so they're gonna let me play in Worlds anyway. So that's cool.
I
Yeah, you
actually
guys
think it's
will all
impressive. Like Anthony has been doing, he didn't spike, but he's qualified for points. So good job, Anthony, as well. Like he's
You
been
know-
constantly, yeah.
Yeah, you know how devastated I would have been if I missed like on points because I dropped from the first PT early because I didn't know what AMPs were and I cut my hand open on like a steel railing. I was like, well, I can't like queue for the PT anymore off my match record, so I might as well just drop. So I dropped early. So if I'd like actually missed, man, that would have been that would have been embarrassing. But it's okay. I don't have to feel bad about doing that anymore. So
That's good. Yeah, out of this top eight, the top eight picture you see, there was also a lot of great people and great names. There's the first one is obviously my very good friend Marco Del Pivo, who tested with us for the first RC in Sofia. He started the season not qualified for the RC and then pulled out some amazing record, two top 16 at the RCs and finishing off with the top 8 of the Pro Tour. That's crazy good. And then we have Christian Calcano, who also came off like qualified quite randomly, I would say, to the Italian regional championship. No, sorry, no, actually, he came to the Italian regional championship, qualified to the next regional championship in Greece. Top 16 that one, and here he is in the top 8. And then we have the winner, Jake Bradsley, with Arachnascam, his first Pro Tour. So, crazy, like, just win the first Pro Tour. It's something that, I don't know, it's just unbelievable to think about. And then you have Stefano Vinci from Italy. He's been a PTQ grinder forever. I have seen him doing well very often. He top 8 at the RC in Athens. And then we see Kai Bude, the greatest of all time, 7 Pro Tour wins. And then finally Dominic Harvey, who was part of my team and got the job done with Amulet Titan, being one of the Amulet Master. We've talked about him in the previous podcast about his Amulet Bible, and here he is with his pet deck, really showing to you, Anthony, that modern, it's all about pet decks.
Does
Yeah,
it though?
pet decks. That's why Javier, a long time Tron fan, got there. He had always planned to play Tron, got there with his pet deck. Same thing with Calc. He'd been playing Tron for ages, He's been stuck with it all the years. Definitely didn't pick it up the week before because it was well positioned. Same thing with, Simon, all these guys with their pet decks. Kai Buda, also well known as a Rhinos fan,
Oh yeah, he's been playing Rhino since 1998. Like, isn't that wild?
Yeah, that's actually true. Oh my, wow, that's incredible. So you're absolutely right, Mango. All these guys with their pet decks, absolutely, you're right.
I mean, in Mango's defense, I will say I've been Tron a little bit. Not pet deck Tron, but I've been playing Tron for a bunch of years.
Yeah, but Tron is I also have a Tron deck.
Every single deck. Go on, Simon.
I also have a Tron deck as well, that I actually own, like one of the, few decks that I have with me. So it's, yeah. I guess Javier and I are just Tron mains.
I mean, I have a pet goldfish. It doesn't make me a goldfish.
Maybe.
You're just a goldfish not testing through, so.
People brought, played Rhinos with very few weeks of testing because of a very good position. So of course my message about pet deck was obviously a joke, as I know Anthony doesn't believe in that. And this is the Pro Tour, modern Pro Tour, and players of course metagamed, Tron, Rhinos, and Scam were very good in the metagame, and they basically were the only 3 decks that did well. It's kind of crazy how much everyone else lost. If you look at the metagame breakdown that Frank Karsten made. So yeah, I wanted to, now that maybe we're talking about a little bit more about the deck selection, how did you guys come up with Tron? Did you guys try any other deck? Is there something that you want to share with our listeners? Were you on something else and switched to Tron on Monday? Tell us the story.
Yeah, so we're juggling around with a few decks leading into the testing house. We had Tangrams was pretty much locked on Scam, which we can call it Scam on this podcast. It's nice, yeah. And we had some interesting Rhinos. We had at this point we had abandoned 4-color. Kind of concluded that the deck is just kind of dysfunctional and not great because it's so reliant on having the one ring in order to not just spin its wheels and do nothing. You can remove a bunch of things, but then eventually you just die with 6 lands in hand because the red and 6 just kept taking up and didn't do anything. That happened a lot with our 4-color testing. So kind of off that deck. And we were also we had some interest in Tron. We had I think Jonas Eloranta on the team. He's a Finnish player. Who was the one who had been championing it the most. And he's not really a Tron player, but he just thought the deck seemed strong. And I guess some of the rest of us, when we were interested in Rhinos, we kind of got off of it because of Tron. And the Tron matchup was similarly awkward for 4-color when we played that, and it was it started to seem I guess actually a lot of these really good decks, the blue-black ring decks, for instance, was another thing that we were trying and kept losing to Tron. I was I guess the Tron deck is kind of juicy actually. Depending on what the metagame is, it could be very good, but the main issue is the Scam matchup. that, like, in our early testing, like, had not looked very good for Tron. I remember, like, our very first play session was, like, me against Javier, where I ended up winning all 3 die rolls as the scam player and just completely steamrolled him. And I was like, oh, well, okay, that was it. That was that. But, yeah, so in the house, we got to, like, revisit it, and we had some sessions in paper where, like, Javier made some changes to the deck, tried to theorize a bit, that, like, if you add, like, that maybe, like, Dismember is worth it over Gigantha, because that way you can actually interact with the problem cards like Dorothy Voidwalker or a turn 1 scam. And so, like, we tried this approach, and, like, like, removing some chromatic stars because it's really bad against Dorothy. And then, like, we had some sessions where Tron was actually winning against scam, which were like, okay, hold on a moment. Like, that is supposed to be, like, the one reason not to play Tron is that scam is really popular. And so at that point, we got, like, a lot of people on the team. Like, we ended up with 8 Tron players. And we were just, like, sitting there, like, next to each other, running, like, 3 to 4 scam versus Tron paper matches. Just trying to, like, discern, like, okay, well, is this actually true? And the issue with testing, like, focus testing against scam is that it has, like, this, the same thing that Greasefang had as well, where, like, because it's, like, such a high variance spike deck, you can't really, like, determine anything off, like, 10 matches or even 20 matches. You need a lot of matches to, like, really get a feel for, like, okay, so, like, how much does the free wins actually matter? And so on. So, in the end, and once we were, like, scolded by Tristan to, like, put more Blood Moons in our scam deck, we ended up concluding that, okay, scam is good against Tron. Also significantly so. Like, at least a 58% favorite against our list, which was tuned for scam. But we decided that, I mean, even then, like, it just seems like so good against so many of the other decks that it's just worth running. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Javier.
Well, I mean, it's more or less the story. There was obviously more into that. I personally felt Tron was underrated on the scam side based on, like, the end of the testing was, like, we knew how to play scam against Tron very well, but for my perception of the situation was that we were not able to play well against Tron with scam decks. Not against Tron, but against our version. So I think our win rate got higher for scam, not because scam got much better, but because we actually learned how to play against our Tron deck. So my impression was that we will be fine against it in the PT, and that's how it felt against my opponents in the PT as well. Like, they were not exactly, like, they didn't know what the matchup was about, because the Tron decks they had played before, they had nothing to do, like, compared to our deck list. So for me, I think that was a very big part of the conclusion of playing a lot against scam. Like, scam was getting slowly better, even though we didn't change as much. I think Blood Moons were actually good, but, like, for me, it was, we knew how to play better. We mulligan more, we mulligan better, or whatever. Remember, like, the beginning we were keeping hands, like, fine hands and losing to Tron every time.
We have a Ragamatter and
So
Thoughtseize,
I felt like that, and yeah, I mean, we did a lot of work in the deck. I think if you see the deck list, there's a lot of, like, there's a lot of odd choices or whatever. Like, there's just, like, a bunch of the talisman, the talisman obviously is the biggest one. I got the 3 Silver Scryings, which obviously created a lot of memes in the house, because let's say many players did not believe in 3 Scryings. There was a lot of, like, delving back and forth, by the way, like 3 talismans, 2 talismans, 1 talisman, shit, talisman's great, I'm gonna play 4 stars shit, I'm gonna play 3 relics sucks, I'm gonna play 4 relics are great. We had all of this happened, like we went through all of this. Let's play for these members,
Let's unpack a little bit of the list, because, of course, it is not a normal list of Tron. I remember, you've always seen 4 Chromatic Star in Tron, whereas you guys only played 1. You've mostly seen Giganta as a companion, whereas you guys played 3 copies of Dismember, as well as, finally, Urza Saga, which is a card that I have not seen in Tron before. Maybe I think those 3 topics are something that I'm sure the listener will want to hear about.
All right.
Well, hang on. So I think something important about the way that we decided to play Tron in the first place is that Javier always does this thing where he tries to, like, find the disqualifications for a deck and then tries to imagine a world in which they're not true, which mostly sounds implausible. So he was like, why aren't we playing this deck? And, we'd say because of this. And he was like, but what if that wasn't true? And that was the case for Tron, specifically. He was like, why don't we like Tron? Because it loses to Scam. And then I said, And then he said, what if that wasn't true? I was like, it is true, though. And he said, what if we could make it so it wasn't true? I told him, I don't think you can do that. And then he played like literally 100 games, and he's like, I think we did it. So I think that's interesting, though, that he took that specific approach. Like, he was trying to deconstruct the weaknesses and see which ones could be made palatable. And I think that's reasonable, right? Because one of the big things for our deck selection for this tournament was that everything had some horrible weakness that made us not want to play it, which caused us to switch what we were looking at quite often, I think. So I think this approach makes a lot of sense. I think it's a good way to look at formats in general that are hard to crack. Like, even the things that sound implausible. Because they did sound like, it just sounded ridiculous, all of these things. And a lot of them were, but one of them wasn't. And that's how we ended up playing Tron. Anyway, go on.
Tron. Yeah, I mean, we went through a lot of things, but like, we just like, I mean, obviously, we were kind of confident that the changes we made were good. By the way, I mean, I got an article this week. It's gonna be up in Haruya, probably in a few days, where I talk a little bit also about how we made the deck. But long story short, from a personal point of view, I think we all agreed, like, we assumed at some point, like, well, maybe we put these members on the Gigantha, but what if everything else was also wrong? Like, what if, you know, the deck, the way Tron is built, I mean, Tron was built 10 years ago. Magic was different. The cards that Tron played were different. Like, maybe now it's not right. Like, maybe there's the cards have changed, so we should not play the cards that way. And two, there's a possibility that it was always wrong. Like, this could be the case as well, easily. Right? Like, those things could be true. So we just thought, like, okay, there's no rules here. Let's just make the deck from scratch. Let's just imagine they just release the Tron lands, and we have to make the Tron deck from zero with this ring and this card from scratch. And let's not say things like, yeah, this deck always plays for scryings and 4 stars because, you know, so it must be correct. Like, why? You know, why is that the case?
In that way, it was like literally the opposite of the pet deck thing, because you just took it apart. Like, you know, if it had been your pet deck, you might have been attached to certain ideas about how the deck works or should look. But we literally just, you know, started again. So I think it was really, like, the pet deck thing could have held us back if it was true. But fortunately, we're ready to start again. I think this ties into, like, some of the latter points as well. Like, I mean, this is jumping ahead a little bit on one of Mengu's questions about, for example, Urza Saga. But when Urza Saga came out, it was tried in Tron lists, and it sucked. It just didn't really fit with the Tron decks at the time. But now Urza Saga is back, so that's interesting, right? But it doesn't mean that it was right then. It wasn't that the first people who tried Urza Saga when it came out in Tron were wrong. It just means that the Tron deck is different now. That's why it makes sense here. We'll get to that soon, but I think that kind of deconstruction is really important when you're looking at how we built this Tron deck in the first place. It wasn't that, you know... Yeah, I think, yeah, it's good. It's important to recognize that we're starting again. I think there's enough new cards now.
Yeah, for sure. Like the just like the addition of these, like, you know, like we already had Oblivion Stone who did a little bit of this, where like if the opponent played Blood Moon or you get disrupted, like you could still, you know, like play a turn 3 Oblivion Stone, and that, like, you had time to do that because they like spent their mana trying to disrupt you, and then like you could track it on turn 5, and like that was okay. But like now we also have Karn can do a similar thing where, like, okay, you play a Karn, like maybe he dies, but he got like a bridge or something, and that buys you time. Or and then the ring is like especially a lot of this, right, where like, yeah, like they can disrupt you, but you just like play the ring, and that buys you time. Then you draw some cards, and you eventually like stitch your Tron together later in the game. And the fact that we have like so many ways to like play without the Tron changes a lot of, like, you know, in the beginning of testing, we had, like, we bullied Javier so much for his mulliganing. Like, because we all had this, like, idea that, like, no. You mulligan to 3 until you hit Tron. Like, there was just, you know, no exceptions. If you don't have Tron in your opening hand, just ship it away. And, like, we kept seeing Javier, like, keep these hands that were like, yeah, I mean, I got some scrying, and then, like, you know, but you can, like, you know, play Oblivion Stone into ring if you hit a couple land drops, but yeah. And then he would just, like, you know, rip, like, you know, power plant mine off the top and be like, oh, okay, I guess I have Tron turn 3. But then we'd all be like, wow, okay, that's, I guess, how Javier's winning. But, so, like, we had a lot of discussions where it's like, okay, we need to, like, you know, we are interested in Tron, but we need to teach Javier how to mulligan correctly with the deck. And then, yeah, what happened a lot was that a lot of us were like, I guess this hand that can cast a turn 4 ring is kind of juicy, huh? Like, you know, and we actually ended up keeping way more hands. This is also the story of, like, how we ended up adding the talismans, because we looked at those games that Javier were playing, and we're like, like in these hands, like Talisman looks great. You can play a card or a ring on turn 3. It seems like really good. We actually were thinking about Mind Stone in the beginning, but changed it to Talisman for a number of green sources. And then we tried the Mind Stones. Like Imagine tried it, and he was like, "This card is terrible. Like it's not making me keep any more hands. He's still going to go to 4 cards, and then he's not going to keep the Mind Stone in hand. Like he's just going to keep the Tron lands, and then he's going to top deck the Mind Stone later, and it's going to be really bad. And like he just wanted something else." But yeah, it turns out that no, if you actually like switch your mindset a little bit, the Talisman does help, and it definitely helped me keep like more hands than I thought would be possible, including my game 5 against Calcano, which was like the questionable keep by like people say it was questionable. Everyone on Team Handshake is like, no, it's not questionable, but
keep.
yeah, just keep it, man.
Yeah, Mulligan with Tron has always been like, oh, you can't start with, I don't know, Forest Ancient Steerings. You have to mulligan a hand like that. And I'm sure there's a lot of other hands that I have kept with Tron and my chat questioned me about. So it's nice to hear the same thing from you guys. And
yeah, the format is just not as linear anymore. So like you don't need to like do your turn 3 card liberated, otherwise you die. Like it's just another
And it's my main argument to keep not hand is that there's a lot of disruption these days. Spell Pierce, Grief, obviously like the matchup when you play at the Pro Tour, but whereas if you play Magic Online or in a paper tournament, you don't know what your opponent is doing. But if you're playing against an interactive matchup, mulligan into Tron is not great, because if your opponent just counters the Sylvan's Grind, then you still don't have Tron, even if you mulligan to it. So a lot of small things like this, and I'm glad to hear it from you.
I think Javier has something important to say.
Yeah, I mean, one is Katsuba was crying because it sucks because he gets well pierced. But I want to say something that is very unique. That for me, personally speaking, I obviously, as Simon said, we had a lot of jokes in the team about this. I don't think my mulligan strategy changed much in 7 cards or whatever. But there's something I realized playing against a scam in the house, and it's something that I want to share with you because I think it's the first time that happens in my Magic career. And it was like, I will often have hands that I will keep on 7 and not keep on like 5 or 6. Now, I will be mulligan a lot to 4, or to 5 or to 3, because I will keep a hand on 7 that had like, a land and dismember as relic, a ring and a card, and 2 lands or whatever, like 2 lands in a forest, because I could play like this mid-range game. But that hand on 5 will be bad to play. I will keep forest, dismember, talisman, ring or whatever. But I will not keep this hand on 5 because I'm not beating anyone with this hand on 5. So I might as well just mulligan to 4 to the natural Tron and just top the bombs. And that's, and like the moment I realized, I was like, hey, this is strange, like this is but I think this is correct. Like I don't want to keep this like. I want to keep this medium hand on 7 because I can grind and use Karn as a Jace, Man Sculptor or whatever, and also rings, and just play this like attrition's game with an Olean Stone or whatever. But in 5, I'm not gonna win the game. I'm not gonna out card you on 5. So I don't wanna keep the fair hands on 5. I wanna keep them on 7 or on 6 if they're very good. So that was a very like it was fun. Like at some point I was like, keep on mulligan. I was like, I will keep on 7, mulligan on 6 on 5, and maybe keep on 4. Like that. That's super like that's not how mulligan works. If you keep a hand on 6, you will keep on 7, right? And every small hand you keep less. That's how Magic works. So here we had this graphic where keep 7 was somewhat high, not super high, but somewhat high, and then keep 5 was lower, and then obviously you go up again. And yeah, for me this was a very unique property of this deck, that I like that. For me that was the big discovery. Like, in terms of gameplay, I didn't change much by 7, but I did change I think we kind of learned all of this together. But for me, it was this breakdown. Like when I was like, it was like in the garden. I don't know. It was like, wait, this hand is bad on 6 or 5, but I will keep on 7.
Yeah, because we've been doing the like you were talking about like our mulligan session where we would just take the Tron deck and like lay out 7 cards, discuss it, lay out another, and like discuss it in like different conditions. Yeah, it's really interesting you say this, that like it was your discovery in the garden, because it's the first time I'm hearing this. I think it sounds like super intriguing and correct. So like it makes sense to me, but I hadn't actually thought about that. Oh yeah, like these mid-range hands, they're just not good on 5. Like it makes sense. But I don't think I like abide by that at all at the Pro Tour. So that's I mean, it's probably like something that it's very interesting to like go forward with when you play Tron. I think it makes a lot of sense.
So the way I would think about it is that like Tron's card selection, a lot of it is the mulliganing, and you have to change how that happens now because Tron's curve is like longer now, right? Like you actually just go up the curve. Now you have 4 drops, and not all like 7s and 10s or whatever, right? So what the way you mulligan, the way you use your card selection changes based on that, like relative to how the deck existed before. So I think, yeah, if you played like the previous Tron deck, like you should be aware that like not only did it get rebuilt, but that also means that your heuristics for how you play the deck have to change a lot as well, and that's kind of why. Like you might also, I think to a lesser extent, it also affects like how you play the cards like stirrings or whatever. Of course, the mulligans are the biggest thing with Tron. Like I think so much of our preparation was just these keep in mulligan sessions, which well, we do that normally, but not nearly to this extent, right? Like for Tron, it's a bit special.
I mean, Tron mulliganing is literally the early game. Like I think this is in this deck like I think the biggest thing we could do in terms of gameplay is learn how to mulligan well and actually construct our final version according to our mulligan strategy. Like if we had mulligan differently, the deck list probably should have been built differently. Like we had this how we think the deck should be playing, and this is the best configuration for this way of playing. And we spent a lot of work on like we did like this mulligan. I think it was you, right? Shuffling the deck, like just getting heads. Like that was very useful because that was like the most important decision often in the game. Like, do you keep this 6 or this 5 or which one you put in the bottom? Also, that was also not easy often. Like especially against like a scam or we you could put the thread or not depending on the hand, and it was like. I think we put, rightfully so, though, I think we put a lot of effort on specifically the mulliganing. I think we never, I mean, I don't remember a tournament where we put so much effort on this mulliganing thing. Usually it's just like, whatever, just play well, that's it. But here we had to discuss a lot because even, it doesn't, like, I think Tron is very tricky. It doesn't matter how much you play, sometimes it's like, well, I don't know, like, it's a very complicated thing. And for me, personally speaking, it was very useful to have all this, like, mulligan because I get to discuss a lot of different players giving different perspectives. I think we had the different ideas at the beginning, but I think by the end of the process, we actually were like, yeah, so this is a keep and this is a mulligan. And we pretty much kind of agreed a lot. Actually, I think there was I think we all learned because we came from different situations. I think we converged very well on that regard.
I have one more question about your team's approach of Modern, because of course Modern is a very broad format. So my question is, what did you guys expected the metagame would look like? For example, I remember with the team I was practicing, the Team Orderly Council, Rakdos Evoke and 4-color Omnath were, the most popular decks, but then we had like a lot of just average, like you never know what's gonna happen type of situation. So yeah, I just wanted to ask you, what do you guys expect to be like, I don't know, top 5 most popular deck going into the tournament?
We were definitely all sure that we would have like Scam as the most popular deck and then likely 4-color as the second one, but that one could change because like other people might figure out that the deck is kind of bad. So and then like I thought that like Tron would probably be the 4th or 5th most played, because like we figured out how good it was, and it was like the thought process. Yeah, I mean, I think other people could maybe figure that out too. And plus, like, we obviously make up, like, if we were 8 people playing Tron, like, we were a third of the Tron players in the field, so of course it's gonna like, put up the numbers. And then there was like, like this. Okay, well, what's gonna be the 3rd most popular? I mean, I thought it was Murktide. That was like our assumption going in. We were then like wavering a bit because it seemed like maybe Murktide wouldn't be as popular, but we had a couple Murktide players on the team, like Alan Moo and Stefan. And so we end up, I ended up like thinking, yeah, maybe Murktide could be the 3rd most popular, but it could also like, you could see like something quote unquote crazy, like, it could be Yorkmoth or Rhinos who would like rise up depending on the like how people chose decks. And so it was like definitely like a bit more muddy once we got past the first 2. But yeah, I think, and then we also like, I think we expected more living in than there ended up being. Because we had like from the get-go, like we had kind of identified that living in might be one of like the strongest decks in the format. But like and then we had Tristan working on the deck, and like none of us really wanted to like play it because we saw how Tristan played it, and it was like, oh no, that seems difficult. Because he plays the deck like a Delver deck, which is wild. Because there's there's no cards that cost less than less than 3 mana, right? But he would just like, yeah, I mean, I just play an endurance, and then like I beat you down with it while I counter your spells, and then I guess eventually I living end. Yeah, it was really cool.
So
Cure of Mysteries being like the biggest Delver ever.
Yeah, like
what did you guys think of? Sorry, Anthony, go ahead.
Yeah, the biggest thing for us was exactly how big the biggest decks were going to be. So I think everybody on our team agreed that Rakdos Evoke was going to be the most popular deck. But we didn't know whether that was going to be like 12 or 20. In hindsight, obviously the people who said 20 were correct, but we weren't sure if it was going to be that many because although we felt that it was the deck to beat, we thought that might push some people off it. We didn't think the deck was like, super ahead of everybody, right? We just thought it was kind of the deck to beat at the time. So we definitely didn't necessarily agree on how big it was going to be. And I mean, that stuff is just impossible to know in advance anyway, right? Like, there's not really a way for us to know 12, 20, like... I did think it was funny that we thought maybe there won't be as much 4-color because people will realize that it's not good, but then we didn't apply that to Murktide. We thought people, like, it seems a bit odd, but somehow I feel that's justifiable. I'm not as sure. Maybe it feels like people who play 4-color were not as attached to their deck. I don't know, but I guess that's why there was. Maybe as people did figure it out, there was very little Murktide. I think that was the biggest thing that diverged from our expectations. Anyway, go on.
So despite 4-color, you guys say it's bad. It did quite bad at the tournament, 43 win percentage. It was the only deck that managed to beat Rakdos Evoke at the tournament.
Yeah, that's the main thing it does.
And I guess Timur Rhinos as well.
Yeah.
But overall, basically, like, the reason to play 4-color Omnath is because you, in testing, found a good plan against Rakdos Scam, and we're just happy to play the matchup, and, you expect it to be 20%. Although, obviously, 20% is still, like, 1/5 of the tournament, so it's only two rounds, statistically.
Yeah, and I guess maybe we should elaborate on why the 4-color deck isn't good, because we've said that a couple times now, but it might be good to say quickly why it's not good. I mean, the deck is just full of mana, not that much card advantage outside the One Ring, has conditional answers, and some of it has like kind of conditional threats because you can't really like run over people with Omnath or whatever. Like if you play a bad, like a lot of decks, if you have a powerful enough threat, you might just kill them. Like for example, Murktide's worst matchups, you might just still kill them with like Ragavan and Murktide or whatever. And your answers are more broad. Like Counterspell can work against a lot of decks, even if it's not at its best. But 4-color doesn't really have that. Like if Lightning Bolt and Prismatic Ending are good, then you have a lot less useful interaction. You can't really run people over with Omnath, so your bad matchups are really, really bad. So yeah, I think the 4-color deck was just not very good. Yeah, I thought it might be helpful to say why we thought that, as opposed to just saying that it wasn't good, which it isn't. But
yeah, the one thing here is like for me when deciding a deck for a tournament, specifically Modern, which is like in Modern, I think obviously deck selection is extremely important. I think it's the way I think about it is I try to fall into what I call like traps, like trap decks. Like decks are actually very bad for a tournament. Like I don't think that I think the Tron deck we played was excellent. I think it's like I'm very happy and proud of the work we did. I think the deck it was the time I've been in a tournament of Modern where I felt my deck was as good. Like other Modern top 8s I have in PTs, my deck didn't feel as good as this one. This was like, wow, this time we actually like this is good. Even so, I think the difference between this and if we had all played like a Scam playing a good version or whatever, or even Rhinos if we had worked more on it or whatever, I think it will be not as large as the difference it will be from playing those decks to like playing for color. Like I think if we play for color or we play Yawgmoth in this tournament, I think we will be like playing the deck that we should not be playing in the tournament. And for me, that's like. Obviously I try to play the best deck and the very, but for me, what's even more important is to make sure I don't play this 4-color deck in this field. Like, I usually give more thought on this specifically. Like, choosing between like two decks that are gonna be fine. at some point it's probably better to say like, okay, whatever, it's 2 days for the tournament, you just pick one and we just build a version of this, and that's fine. Like, we cannot get it wrong as long as we identify the ones that we do not want to play, which was like half the team already identified this. Like, you guys actually identified this early in the 4-color, and I think that was actually the most important part for our constructed performance. So that's how I like to approach this tournament. Just try to avoid the traps instead of like just focusing all in what could go well, because things sometimes metagame you guess them bad or wrong or whatever, like, but just try to play decks that are very functional against what you expect. That's a good thing.
Just to be clear as well, Javier did say that before the tournament as well. He's not just saying that because we crushed it and he came first for Swiss again. Like, he said that I feel like this is the best modern deck I've ever had before the tournament started as well. So, it's true. You really did believe it. And, well,
I did believe it.
Mengu, we believe in results. So, here we are.
Well, I don't say those things lightly, though. That's the thing here. Like,
he doesn't. He's never said it before. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I was saving I was saving it for this tournament.
Yeah, I would say that with the LMS Bologna, where 4-color Omnath was the most popular deck and it did very poorly, as well as, I also found out that it was just, its weakness was that it was just a reactive deck in a format where I don't think it's great to be reactive. Just a bunch of things combined, plus the data from that one event made me kind of expect that it would have done poorly at the tournament, yet was going to be a very popular deck because somehow it's always been popular, even back with Yorion, and it wasn't that good, yet it was the most popular. So it's things like, yeah, it's kind of like Murktide, although surprisingly people dropped it. So I guess because it's very similar to Scam, and Scam is just better. Maybe that could be the reason. Whereas there isn't quite the same as 4-color.
Yeah, I think some people switched to the Ragavan decks, and then I think also the like new blue-black ring deck kind of like drove some Murktide players. Because like
the blue-black control.
Yeah, because it's like like I assume that if you like you kind of like playing these like counterspell decks, and then like you've heard and you can see like how the demise of Murktide is coming, and then there is there's this like new sexy like blue-black deck with counterspell that like also plays Murktide, and it seems like like you could reasonably like fall for that one instead of Murktide, and the issue is that they're like both kind of trap decks, so.
I'd use a different word that rhymes with trap, but okay.
Yeah, for sure. The Mirror Control had a 45 win percentage as well. As I said at the beginning, basically only 3 decks had a big sample size and a winning record, which are Rhinos, Rakdos, and Tron. Sorry.
Yeah, there's also the 5 Hammer players, which is like not necessarily a large sample size, but it's definitely interesting because that's like a deck that is obviously my pet deck now, recently here. And I played it in Bologna, where I went 0-3. I was like, yeah, okay, I guess that's like what you could expect from from Hammer. And then like, the thought that like the ring the thought that like the ring is just really bad for it. Cause like the issue with the ring is that like, yeah, you get to buy a turn, but the opponent gets to develop. But for Hammer, like, that you don't actually develop that much. Like, you're still just like, your thing is that you're threatening lethal on every turn, and so that you can't like threaten that much more lethal necessarily, and you gain a lot of your advantage for the opponent having to be scared of you. So the fact that they can like just develop this ring, tap out for the card advantage, and then like keep up cards to like kill your things seems pretty bad for me. So I thought the like on that matchup was really bad for Hammer, and I guess I actually like didn't play out that poor. Okay, they only played like 5 times. I see 6 times in the tournament, but and I thought that would be really popular. And then like even like something like the Tron matchup, I thought like was not even that good anymore because of the ring. So it just like seemed like, yeah, maybe the deck is just not that good. But when I think about it now, like also the like resurgence of Yawgmoth, which is also not a ring deck sometimes at least, and like that's a really bad matchup. It just seems like a lot of these, and like Murktide levels going down, which was one of your good matchups. So it seemed like it really wasn't looking good for the Hammers. But like actually, when you think about it in the winners metagame, with like the bad decks like which were like 4-color and Yawgmoth, like once they kind of like disappear from the metagame, you're actually looking at a pretty good spread, because I think you're totally fine into Scam and into Rhinos, especially if they're not prepared, because they're focusing on like beating these Cascade decks and beating Tron and whatnot, which would be the winners metagame, right? And and then don't pack as many like Force of Vigors and not as many like Shatter effects and Waste Your Answer Sanctifier from the scam side, and you can actually like end up with a position where the hammer deck's looking pretty juicy in the winners metagame, which is very like it's always like interesting how that works. And it's cool to see it in action here. Obviously, it's a really small sample size, so it could just be like I'm extrapolating from noise. Yeah, it was it's cool to see.
Some hope yet.
Because at this point we have been avoiding this for like half an hour already.
Yeah, I also wanted to
What?
say something
I'm not
about
trying to
it.
push
Go
off
ahead,
for any
Javier.
particular reason, Javier. That's not what I don't know what you're accusing me of. I just think we should go to the next thing because there's nothing important.
No, I cannot
no,
take any.
there's-
I can take it anymore, please. Which was the best winner deck in Modern, Mengu? Tell this to the audience.
It's the best deck out of Pro Tour Lord of the Rings. It's Merfolk.
Bam! Heard first in the carnies. 8-2, 80% win rate. What a win rate. Merfolk.
When Dominaria United came out, Javier said Budagnes Catcher is gonna make Merfolk better than Murktide.
80%.
I don't know
was
if that's what he
Murktide-
said. I don't know if that's what he said. Maybe it was what he said actually. I don't know. It's not
I
that
don't
high
know
a
if
bar.
I said that, but I said it will make Merfolk actually like a fine deck. And here we are, 80% win rate, Mengu. 8-2.
No, we also
3-0
should
against
say
a scam.
we also should say another elephant in the room, because 46 minutes passed and people might think that we recorded this podcast at the beginning of the week, but there has been a ban announcement that involved Modern, and it's gonna change things because I think that they unbanned a card that is Legacy and Vintage power level, which is Preordain, which has never been legally Modern. Actually, no, it's been legally Modern for like 6 months or whatever, but yeah, so we have now Preordain, which obviously is gonna slot into Blue-Red Murktide, Blue-Black Control, Grinding Station Breach, Is a Prowse, just a bunch of decks that are just happy to cast Cantrip. We're now cast the best Cantrip in Modern. I guess a second after Expressive Iteration, probably.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
great.
I've
I can
seen a-
scroll my
I've
mouth
seen
at the
a-
bottom.
I've seen a preliminaries list with Preordain in Hammer Time and Preordain in Amulet Titan, so kind of like you can probably put it in everywhere. Although it's obviously a sorcery speed, and Orcish Bowmaster is the most popular card, so it's gonna be very interesting to see how Modern shakes up after the Pro Tour Barcelona.
We
I will say,
we
if
really
you're like
enjoyed.
not
Go on.
Oh, if you're like not vaguely interested in Serum Visions, like not like a lot of decks don't play Serum Visions for good reasons. It's not a very good card. But if you're not like could see yourself like, okay, maybe there's a chance that like adding a one Serum Visions to my deck could be good, then I don't think you're interested in Preordain, because
Yeah.
the Preordain still has the same downside, like a lot of the same downsides that Serum Visions has. It's a lot better as a cantrip, because if you need something right now, you can find it immediately, or like, you have a better chance of like finding it immediately. But it still has the downside of like you spend 1 mana to not impact the board, and that can matter a lot in Modern depending on your deck. So playing it in stuff like Hammer, and a little bit less in Amulet. Like in Amulet, we have seen a cantrip being played before. It's just a little bit harder than mana base to make them function. But yeah, like it shouldn't be added to decks that are like not really interested in cantrips in the first place. But actually, the two Murktide players on our team, Stefan and Alan, ended up registering 2 copies of Serum Missions. So
Yeah, I was gonna say I really enjoyed that, because as soon as the announcement went up, like our media was just people dunking on Alan over and over again. People saying stuff like Wizards saw Alan who registered Serum Visions at the Pro Tour and felt sorry, so they unbanned Preordain. That sort of thing. Which might be true. I don't know. I would feel sorry for someone who did that as well. But it was a lot of fun. I agree a lot with Simon though. I mean, I get that this is a better cantrip than Serum Visions. Sure, that wasn't that high a bar, but it is a lot better. But I don't know. Like, I think cantrips are there's a specific place for them in Modern. I think there's only so much a cantrip can do. I mean, I could be wrong. I haven't played that much with Preordain, but I feel like what Simon says is correct.
I have played with Preordain a lot in Legacy, obviously. I mean, I also was there when they banned in Modern. I think I have a small speech on this, but I think cantrips, I mean, this goes it's a little bit related with the Chromatic Star thing, actually, in a way. I just think, well, cantrips are overrated. Like 2000, like I played a lot of Legacy. Legacy is the cantrip format. They're obviously great. They shape your deck. They shape the format. Blah blah blah. 2023, I think we're in a position where power creep makes it so cantrips are simply not very good. Like Simon said, you are paying 1 mana for nothing. So cantrips, in a nutshell, cantrip does what a cantrip does is just you pay mana, so you lose tempo for card quality, right? Like you're improving your hand by paying mana. So the more polarized or the better your answers are, the better this is. Like if you're trading mana for card quality, and then card quality means like force of will into your opponent combo card, well, that's excellent, right? And if you're paying Preordain into a sweeper that actually will invalidate all your opponent's things, that's also very good. The issue though is if all cards are actually the same, similarly the same, let's say you play a deck with like Kir Tapes, Bolts, and Preordains, Preordain is actually not good in this situation because you're gonna find answers that are not actually beneficial to those cards, and also those threats are not beneficial against the answers by themselves. So what happens is, if the threats are answers themselves, aka Bowmasters, if you preordain into a Bowmaster, that's not necessarily good compared to having a card that actually deals with your opponent's Bowmasters. For example, just an example, but like there's a lot of situations where this doesn't apply in Modern, and also in Modern. So now most of the best cards, the big like engines or whatever, are mostly rings, and those rings are actually like gonna make the card advantage doesn't matter as much because they just will win the game with the card advantage axis, which is why a scam deck is good because it actually beats you on the tempo axis a lot, where your card advantage doesn't even comes into play. And I think this mana advantage. Now, I don't think Preordain is very good. I actually agree with the Simon thing, but I will take it for more far. Like even Ponder, which is probably like better card, will actually not be super impactful in Modern. I think it's playable. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be playing more than it should, and I'm also sure it's playable at power level. Don't get me wrong, the card is very good, but I think the card is not good enough compared to how good the threats are right now. So that's my impression. My impression is it's like most of the best decks in Modern actually do not want Preordain, as you know, Simon said, and yeah, I think this card is not very impactful. It's gonna be impactful for the tier 2 deck, so it's actually a good unban. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm just don't think it's gonna change the landscape too much. That's my impression. Obviously, these takes can be wrong, but that's how I feel about Modern, Magic, and cantrips right now. I think cantrips are just like overrated.
What about the card Dreaded Arcanist, which, you know, it's banned in Legacy and it's never been very good in Modern, mostly because of the lack of Ponder Brainstorm, whereas in Legacy you do have those cards. Do you think that the card Dreaded Arcanist will now be able to see more play because of the Preordain unban?
Well, that's one thing, Mengu. Do you think, like, how sure are you that Preordain is a better card than Consider? Like, thinking that DRC is stable, you know, like, is it even better?
Yeah, I mentioned this. Yeah, I mentioned this a lot, and I think it is mostly because you get to see an additional card. We were playing Thought Scour before Consider, and then they cut Thought Scour for Consider because it was seeing an additional card, and now Ponder gets to see an additional card. So, for example, today I played 2 leagues with Preordain, and I mean, we've been playing with Preordain forever, but I kept one lander, and I go bottom, didn't draw land, the next draw step I was a land. Consider would have made me miss a land drop. And obviously this happens to everything, like you need a Murktide, and it's the 4th card, and you draw it with Ponder. Like, Preordain, sorry. Like, things like this, where just overall seeing an additional card is always going to be the better choice, and that's why again we went from Thought Scour to Consider, and I think that's why it's going to be much better to go from Consider to Preordain. But now I think the question is another one. It's, should we play both in Blue-Red Murktide, for example? Should we play both Preordain and Consider? Because I think personally it's too many. I've seen lists with 8. Tomorrow I'm gonna stream Murktide. I'm gonna only play 7, but I can see it big in 6 or 5 or whatever.
I have one thing to add here. Like, I am not convinced of one thing you said. You're saying since Todd Scour goes to consider because you exchange the milling for card selection, therefore consider is worse than Preordain. I don't think that's necessarily true because you don't need 10 cards to be milled for Murktide Region. You need, you need enough cards. You don't need all the. This is not a dredge deck. Like I don't think it's I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying like one of the reasons you said doesn't necessarily has to be true. Like the fact that Scour is worse than Consider doesn't mean Consider being worse than Preordain because there's a world where you choose the middle, between milling, self-milling, and scrying. I think that's more like a experience thing. Also depends on if you play like Kazakh Breach or whatever, I will say.
There is another big reason why Preordain is very good, and I think better than Consider, is because of Dragon's Rage Channeler. You have a million instant,
Sure.
and it's like in Legacy. In Legacy, before the Express Iteration ban, you always had sorceries, but in Modern, you never did.
Absolutely.
So I think that's just a bunch of reasons why I think Preordain is gonna be just very good in the Dragon's Rage Channeler decks, whereas Consider was good. I mean, you're happy to play Consider. Obviously, passing up with Consider and Counterspell was nice, and it's possible that you should play both. It's just that I think that if you have to decide one, if you guys are saying that cantrips are bad, which on a certain level I agree, if the cantrips are bad. In Legacy, the cantrips are good, so you still play with Ponder and Brainstorm. It's kind of weird why we only play 8, right, in Legacy? Why don't we play 9?
Well, you could play 7 also.
For example. You could play 7 also.
Yeah,
like sometimes...
I want to give you with 7. You're saying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah?
Is this a silver
Yeah,
scrying situation? I don't know. Maybe.
It could be, yeah. I was making several plan for the blue-black deck in Legacy against Orcish Bowmaster. I think it's fine to shave Ponder and things like that. So it's kind of a similar thing now. And the Pro Tour passed. There's not going to be another professional event in a long time in Modern. So we're not going to have too many important results to... I guess... the Pro Tour Chicago is Pioneer, right?
It is, but we have Ghent, the next like regionals, which is coming up in.
Yeah, this is a modern.
I think it's like in January here in Europe at least.
Ghent is January, and the RPTQ. Sorry, the RPTQ. The
regional
WCQ.
qualifiers. Yeah.
Regional qualifiers starts in September, so I guess
Yes,
that is nice.
So there'll be lots of reasons to play mod for people. Not that I think many mod players needed a reason. They just play it because they like it, which is totally valid. But I mean, there is some level of development that continues, I suppose, with the challenges and whatnot. I did want to say one thing about like the cantrips and Murktide specifically, which is that like it's a lot of what you're saying could sell me on Preordain being good in Murktide. It's not as likely to sell me that Preordain makes Murktide as a deck much better, which I think is what we care about a little more, isn't it? Like I'm not really seeing why Preordain will make a large difference to how strong the Murktide deck is overall. I think one of the big problems with the Murktide deck is that sometimes it's not very consistent because you have to draw your cards in a certain order, and that makes it sound like Preordain would be good because it should make your deck more consistent. But the problem is that you have a very specific time frame in which you need this. Like you often need to have interaction as well as your 1-drops, but you can't exactly like cantrip into a 1-drop on turn 1. So yeah, I don't think it helps the deck that much in terms of like what the deck has problems with. Yeah, like I'm not really. I mean, I can totally buy that it's good in Murktide, especially because of the Dragon's Rage channel thing. I just can't buy that like it makes me want to play Murktide significantly more than I did before.
Yeah, I agree.
There's also to say that at the you guys talked about earlier how Hammer was good position in the winners metagame, and I think also Murktide is fine if the three most popular decks are Scam, Rhinos, and Tron, or at least the best decks coming out of the PT are these three. Murktide isn't that bad against these three, and Murktide suffers against Orcish Bowmasters, that's for sure. But if Yawgmoth and other Orcish Bowmaster decks are not doing great, then I think that Blue Murktide will definitely be way more popular now. Bunch of reasons, but mostly because of Preordain. So I think it's gonna be the second most popular deck after Blue Black, after Rack the Scam, I think.
one of the reasons that we chose to play Tron was actually that we liked our Murktide matchup. Because we did expect it to be popular. Like not, super popular, but at least like, third, fourth most played deck. And we played a lot against Murktide, and in general, like, we came up on top. We discovered that we didn't even need the Cityscape levelers in the main deck to feel favored. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. I think the dismembers definitely help at, like, alleviating some of the pressure. And then you can play these slower games where you just, like, don't jam into the counterspells until you can double spell. Or you force the Murktide player to, like, tap out, and then, like, you just take advantage of your like, incredible mana advantage. There's a lot of cards in the Tron deck that the Murktide player actually has, like, issues with. So yeah,
like the One Ring.
Yeah, for instance. Yeah.
I also felt like kind of nice as Rhinos against Murktide. I don't know. How did you guys feel about that matchup?
What? Sorry.
How did you feel about Rhinos against Murktide?
So mostly, Murktide was kind of left behind in testing. There was a bunch of players on it. I was when I was testing for the mocks and for Bologna, I quit Murktide because it was very bad against Orcish Bowmaster, and I went on the team Rakdos Cam. And then Lorien Reveal kind of felt like it was the big deal. Everyone was so hyped about Lorien Reveal in Murktide. A lot of people tried it. I remember Mog coming to the testing house being like, I'm locked on Murktide, and then I told him, please just, get a player and do a long testing session against Scam, and he went like, I don't know, something, I don't remember the number, but like an extremely low amount of wins versus losses, and he just kind of said, all right, I can't play Murktide because it loses to Scam. So we kind of like left it there, honestly. I don't think we went too much past that thing, but historically, Murktide has been good against Rhinos and Tron. I can understand that after you guys change a Tron list, and after people have been changing Rhinos list, then maybe it's not true anymore. But even just having like a 50-50 matchup against those, I think it's not that easy to find a deck that is 50-50 against the three best deck in the format. Obviously, it's better against Scam. Like that will remain the case, even with Preordain, I think.
Well, I think you will have to go a long way to make Murktide a 50-50 against Tron the way it is right now. Like, the issue with Murktide against Tron is before, Tron was trying to cast a 7-mana card, which you could spell Pierce on counterspell or whatever. But now, Tron is trying to play 2 cards on 7 mana. Like, they'll go 7 mana, and they go Olivian Stone, and you're like, well, either I counter this, or this is gonna kill my board. So, if you counter, they can go Rink or Karn. And then sometimes they play Stone, you're like, okay, I'm not gonna counter, and then just next turn they go like, okay, Rink, and if you counter the Ring, they can put the card all the other way around. Like before, the counter spells were very good against Tron because you could just counter their 7-mana card, but now they have 2 4s, and 2 4 is way better against one counter spell than 2 8, and that's the big reason for Tron to actually be good against counter spells decks as opposed to before. Like the curve is actually low in a way where you can just play double spell easily, like 8 mana double spell, 7 mana double spell. That's just a lot.
What about now that Dragon's Rage Channeler gets to Delirium more consistently? So you are most likely just attacking for 3 on turn 2, applying more pressure than it was before.
I mean, Relic of Progenitus did a very good job. Between Relic and Dismembers, that was 6 cards that took care of DRC. That's a lot. 6 cards is a lot of cards. Like, obviously, but also I don't think Preordain, like, specifically against Tron, I think Preordain is bad. Like, I would rather have this considered against Tron because Preordain you tap out to play the DRC 3/3 and then you're stepped out. Like, you have like less mana. You can maybe not go like Pierce plus counterspell because you have to tap out for Preordain. Like, I think specifically against combo decks, Preordain is not at its best. I think it's better against a scam or whatever, but against combo decks where you have to be like, sometimes you have like Tron or the combo decks are gonna require you to have like double counterspell in mid game very often. Like turn 4, you're gonna need 2 counterspells. And Preordain does not play well with this anymore. I mean, compared to Consider or whatever. So
interesting.
Alan
points
said
for sure.
His problem from the Murktide side was that he felt that he was losing to the 3 and 4 mana cards from Tron. Like, he's like, a bunch of my stuff doesn't matter because I try to fight the big spells which beat me, and then I lose to the 4 mana cards anyway. So yeah, it's kind of rough. I don't think Preordain is going to change that dynamic.
Might even make it worse, because of tap outs.
And
this
like,
is definitely.
And if you look at the Sewer Rats Rhinos list, like the Rhinos is
Yeah.
leyline binding again. I don't know. I would feel pretty happy playing that against Murktide, I feel.
Yeah,
It's more consistent with
this
12
list.
Cascaders and their leyline binding.
Yeah,
Rough.
I'm very high on this list. I really like this list. I've been playing it, and it felt very good for me. They also had this amazing plan of having Granite Magistrate in the sideboard, which is possibly the best plan ever against Living Gad, which is your worst matchup. Yeah, the playing Zero Teferi also kind of sounds strange, but you just so all in on threats that you just don't care about answers. Oh, if you have ever tested Rhinos, what was your feeling about the ways to handle the One Ring? Because the Zero Rats played Bone Crusher, Kai Buddha and their team played Questing Beast, and people played Commandeer. So, did you guys have any opinions? Insult
that's
to
a
Injury
nice
was another card, yes.
You have to play some. I think the difference between I don't know how Simon and Anthony feel, but for me they're kind of similar. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. Against our list, we found that like Insult to Injury was better than Questing Beast because of the dismembers. But it like seemed like people were probably more likely to play the Questing Beasts, which was also like and like we with adding dismembers to the Tron deck, we found out there's like just a lot of like application just outside of the scan measure, right?
Random
So,
decks,
against-
remember
Yeah, exactly.
it was,
Question
it
Beast,
was,
Yorkmoth, Omnath, like so many things.
Yeah, I think we played. It was you and me, right? We played the 4-color matchup, right? Like this member on the Omnath, it was like, well, they cannot kill me now. Like, oh, the member of the halfling, it was like, I think there was a game where you just go land halfling, kill the halfling, and then they just like.
Yeah, that matchup must have been so easy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously getting a little bit off track compared to your question, but yeah, it. So I mean, I personally didn't play much with Rhinos, but yeah, it just seems like you can do something. I think we definitely also considered the Bone Crushers. At least like we had them in Living End, but I actually don't know if we like determined that like being able to interact on turn 1 with that gone, because that's what this list is giving up, the turn 1 interaction. Also partly because it's gonna fetch a Triland on turn 1, so it makes sense that you cut that gone from this version. So maybe in Seema Rhinos you're supposed to do Cresting Beast and Dead Gone, and in this version you're supposed to do Leyline Binding and Bone Crush Giant. Like, that kind of makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, the Living End that your teammate Tristan will
Good luck.
yeah, sorry, came up with that also had a very nice technology. Oh, actually, he didn't have it at the PT. He had it at the PTQ.
Yeah, the PDQ.
Which was to play Sanctifier and Vec in the sideboard, so it would cascade into that and not into Living End.
Oh, this is
I wonder.
There's a funny story
Yeah,
about this,
I wonder.
by the way. I just remembered,
Yeah.
because you mentioned this. So they can register the deck, and your deck is legal even if you don't have all the physical cards for the deck. So you can actually play like round 1 not having all the cards. So a bunch of us who like made last minute changes for the PDQ didn't have all the cards for the PDQ, just had to hope that they didn't come up, and then we just had people like running over from the other side of the hall where the vendors were to bring them cards. So I had to like ask a judge, am I allowed to like hand Tristan these Sanctifiers in the middle of his match? Like, because I mean I have them now, he can use them like like if you get it's not like illegal for him to not have them. There's no advantage from that, right? They're just on his deck list, and if he gets them in time, he can play them. So we just have like people just running in the middle of the match. Here, take these. Hope they help. But he didn't actually need them in that match, and that he wants, so it's fine anyway. But it's just really funny just to see people like running up with Sanctifiers. But that was an awesome plan against Scam, I think.
But no mana to cast them. Oh, I didn't know that. I thought he had like 2 dual lands.
No, he's just
No mana.
cascading.
Yeah, but like if he draws them, it's bad.
Yeah, if you draw Living End, it's
3.
bad. You can pitch it to Grief, I guess, but yeah.
You have 3, I guess. It's not like the Granite Magistrate where you only have 2 and you have mana to cast it.
Okay, no, I just
I don't know,
thought he had mana. Like I don't know, for some reason.
I wonder if it worked out, because I know he lost to Mogged in the top 8, which was playing Scam. So I wonder if he actually was
I think
happy
he
with
won
the
the
plan
previous
and it was
time, though,
suggested
right?
going forward.
I think
It's
Okay.
it's also kind of interesting, like in the
Oh, yeah,
his
we
main
can see-
event, like with his list, he was boarding in 15 cards with a Scam. So he's definitely looking for like some ways of like changing up his approach to that matchup, because Yeah, the fact is that like the Dorothy Voidwalker, like if the scale opponent knows how to use it, which I mean at the PT like pretty much everyone will, it's like really scary for the living end player because they just leave the Dorothy like untapped, just don't attack with it, and then you cast your living end, and you can like sacrifice it so it goes in the graveyard, comes back, and then it gets to eat the living end because of like how timing works, so like that one gets exiled with the counter. And then you can just cast the living end again and get your entire board back and like wrap that board. And then you still have a Dorothy in play with a living end under it in case you need it again for some reason. Like it's kind of beautiful.
Yeah, you beat it with Violent Outburst, right? So that works against the Shardless Agent.
Well, you get an
Violent
attack.
Outburst.
Like, it doesn't always beat it, but
You get an attack. Yes, you get an attack. Yes, that's how you beat it.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah, because you get to do it end of turn. Yeah,
But it doesn't necessarily beat. Like, you get an attack, but it's also hard to set up.
Yeah,
like,
you get
a
one
one-shot with a Delphi Voidwalker in play.
yeah,
So,
and it's
like-
really hard to build up a graveyard that's big enough, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, especially if you cast it on turn 2. Yeah, that's true. I found out about that, and that's cool.
But
Sometimes
something
you can also.
Oh, sorry. Something that Scam is
No, I
kind
was
of weak
thinking
to
about-
is like 4 toughness creatures. Like, you know, from the Rhino side, you can bring in the Endurances, and they're like surprisingly good. Not because of its like, you know, shuffling in the graveyard ability, but just because it's a 3/4. Like from the Rhino side, and the same thing happens like in Living End, where like, you know, like, well, I mean, you know, this Living End plan is not that good, but like if you play Curator of Mysteries, like they're, you know, kind of in trouble.
Yeah.
Like you only have so many Terminates, and if they play Lightning Bolt, like yeah, like, good luck. And if you just
Yeah,
like,
for
you
sure.
know, overload on these effects, then like that's actually the game plan.
I found out also another line against Living End on the draw, that sometimes I only did it once, going to discard and discard a Dorothy on turn 1, because if you cast it on turn 2, your opponent just cycles in response, then on turn 3 they play Shardless. So again, we're talking about obviously corner cases and things like that, but this is something that maybe your teammate who decided to play Living End. We also had 2 teammates from our team with Living End, Zen Takashi and the Rohan big brother. I don't remember the name. There were 2. Alex, right? They were great. 2 brother, very young, both of them under 20. They qualified both to the Pro Tour, and they both lost. It's crazy. Combined, they lost 5 win innings for the requalifications.
Oy.
Yeah, they lost like last 3 and last 2 rounds. Is very brutal. But anyway, they were very good to work with. I'm sure they will manage to be back at the PT. But yeah, overall, I think it has been definitely an amazing Pro Tour. I was on the sideline of the event. I was there following and rooting for all my friends that were competing. I played in the side events there, which were actually pretty good. The GP, the Limited Open, was very underplayed. There was only 460 people. It was giving prizes up to top 96. So a good amount of players with 5 and 3 made money. Didn't make day 2, but made it in the money. Yeah, the event gave 8 slots to the next Pro Tour. The winner was Mattia Rizzi from Italy, a very good player. Then the next day there was the PTQ with the classic system of top 32 cut after the sealed, and then 4 pods of draft. I managed to make the top 32, but lost immediately in the quarter. So yeah, it was cool. I enjoyed my weekend of Magic. And then, honestly, my best day was on Sunday, where I got to watch Simon play these wonderful matches against Kalk. And then, of course, the final. I was doing the commentary with a watch party. It was a ton of fun. We had a lot of people. Wizards gave us some boosters to give away, which always attract crowd and noise. So, yeah. I had a great weekend. Obviously, not competing, but it was very fun.
I want to say one thing
competing.
about this, not sponsored, but I actually loved the watching party Mango had there. Like, it was Mango, Torov, and
Hoffel and Filipa.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was very fun. It was like super enjoyable. I actually loved it. It's also like not in the playing area, so you can just be like, screaming or whatever.
You can scream. Yeah.
We did scream, yes.
Yeah, when Kalka, when Jake discarded Ulamog, the crowd went wild. That was definitely the.
I think if you ever like in a tournament and you can watch a tournament from there, it's I like the experience a lot. It was like, maybe we should go there and see the finals there. No, let's just stay here. Yeah, it was definitely a good idea to stay there. It was just very fun.
I would recommend it. It'll be in
And
the MagicCon hall at any MagicCon. So you can just go there. It'll be very obvious. You'll see Mango on a stage or something. Just follow that.
Other than that, I think we kind of. I mean, there's obviously a lot of things to cover, but what about guys? We wrap it up. What do you say?
Yeah, sure.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we only really got to talk about like modern, but that it kind of like fits, for all that happened, right, with the Pro Tour and the bands and everything.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing about the Pro Tour. Like, I got to share, like, for me, as I'm getting older or whatever, I'm getting this pleasure of, like, got to share to my friends and teammates a lot of things of the Spanish culture. Like, some of them had been many times here, but, like, I actually had some of them at my home. Anthony and Simon, along with other friends, came to my place, like, for 3 days afterwards. So I could show them, like, the places where I go to eat normally, like the walk I make in my town, this kind of things, like I actually, take them to some good paella places or whatever. So that's something that gives me joy, showing the ways we do here to people from outside, to my friends. It was actually a pleasure I also got from this PT as well.
It was great. It was much more of the play the game, see the world sort of thing came back for a bit there, like seeing like that side of Spain was very nice. It was very, very, I don't know, it was kind of enriching. Also tasty, that too.
Tasty. Yeah. All right, I agree with me. I'll just wrap it up. Also, let's not have Simon, hold stage. I would say, like, when you take someone
Stage.
Yeah, hostage taker. Yeah, hostage taker.
Yeah, that's fair. That's
Simon,
fair.
do you have anything to say to our listeners? Any platform people can contact you? Any way you make content and you want to share it with us?
Yes,
tell
you
us.
you can follow me on Twitter, which is not called Twitter anymore, but yeah, we'll we're the resistance here.
X.
You can follow me there on at Mr. Checklist Card. That is MR Checklist Card. And then you can I have a YouTube channel. I don't use it that much, but it's like just Simon Nielsen on YouTube. It's easy. And then I do coaching. If you go to metafy.gg under the Magic coaches, you'll find me there at the top. Like I'm currently ranked as a top mentor, which is really cool. And you can book me through there and have me help with your games. I really enjoy doing coaching. It's like I always have liked teaching and obviously talking about Magic. So this is a perfectly intertwined way to do this, and just getting to experience how my students there I am how my students love how they enjoy seeing themselves grow and get better. That is really really cool to me. So yeah, definitely check that out if you're interested in leveling up your game, especially as we're approaching there's always an RCQ season or a regionals coming up, so it's always a good time.
That's it. Thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Patreon.
Thank you.
Oh, Patreon.
Yeah. Oh, we have a new Patreon actually.
Ooh, we actually have. That's true.
Yes.
Simon saving the
last second. Simon saving the day. Yeah.
Thank goodness Simon is here to remind us of things.
Yeah. Okay, Mango, you say the name because you're saying names.
We're gonna shout out Marquez Zarate and Zelkos, who supported the Patreon in these 2 weeks that we didn't make any episode because. So yeah, that's amazing. And again, join the Discord, talk about anything, shares your decks, ask about if Preordain is the best card in Modern. No, actually, Javier will probably disagree with that. And yeah, that's gonna be it for this episode.
I mean,
thank you, everybody. Go ahead, Simon.
I mean, it's Preordain might not be the best card in Modern, but it's the best card in Merfolk, and Merfolk is the best deck in Modern. So
80%. Simon knows. Simon knows what's the best deck in Modern. I kind of want to play Merfolk now. I've not seen the deck list, but I will after the podcast. I'm gonna see them. I will even Fire Lake, for honor of the Merfolk.
Yeah.
Okay, now you can.
All right.
Bye,
thanks everyone for listening.
Bye.
See you next time. Thank you, Simon, for being here, and see you everyone. Bye bye.
Cheers.